companies are making the same mistake. They bring candidates in to a first interview based on what they see on a resume. Too often, they find themselves immediately eliminating that candidate. Just after a few interview questions, they're realizing this person doesn't have the skills that we thought they did. This is a time-consuming process. Every time you schedule an interview, you block half an hour of your time. Maybe the candidate doesn't even show up, right? So you've wasted time on no-shows, and even worse, you've wasted time when candidates do show up, and after just a couple of questions, you're realizing this person is not going to be a fit for a role. Custom skill tests are a remarkable way of screening candidates early in that process to eliminate those wasted hours with candidates who are just not a fit. Leveraging these custom skill tests even further in the process to make sure that by the time that candidate gets to a hiring manager, that candidate is thoroughly assessed for all of the key, very specific, unique skill sets required to be successful in that job are really an important component of saving your hiring manager's time as you go through more robust, in-depth interviews with those candidates. Skill testing is going to be able to enable organizations to make sure that they're spending a lot of time with high potential candidates instead of folks that are posers or wannabes or just nowhere in the ballpark of being right for the position. Almost every job out there needs a custom skill test. Whether you're hiring for a software developer, project manager, customer service rep, office admin, salesperson, you name it. And it's been interesting over the last week as we've been running webinars on how we're implementing AI in the hiring process. The number one thing people want to hear about is how you create custom skill tests to assess candidates in the hiring process. So the client could have gone out and created this test on their own. But imagine how much time that would have taken. They'd have to take a highly paid, highly trained existing blockchain developer and sit them down in a room for, I don't know, hours, days, weeks, and they'd have to put together every single question, every single possible answer, and put it into some sort of a system so that they can actually deliver that to the candidates in a reliable, efficient manner. All of that would just take people far too long. And that's historically why organizations have not done custom skill testing. You've got another organization who's thinking about implementing wide-scale skill testing, and they hire thousands of people. And doing that would have taken 6 to 12 months and hundreds of hours and probably over $100,000 to implement a testing program. In this case, it's 27 positions and thousands of applicants per year. It would have been cost prohibitive. I mean, it would have been worth it for a large organization to do this, but it would have taken so long and cost so much money. Most large organizations, they just couldn't prioritize that. We're going to be able to execute that in 8 to 10 weeks, and we're going to be able to implement almost instantly. We're going to be implementing as we create, using AI to create these custom skill tests. So let's jump into it. I'm going to use the example of the blockchain developer. So here's what I did. I opened ChatGPT 4. I just started with a simple prompt. Create an assessment to determine a blockchain developer's skill set. I gave it some parameters. I want a multiple choice test. I want to know the correct answer because I don't know it. And I want to understand this person's basic, intermediate, and advanced skill set. So here's some nice questions here. It's giving me the correct answers, and it's a really good starting point. So I wanted to keep the test short. In most cases, we want to keep the length of the test to 5 to 10 questions. That's going to take people somewhere between just under 10 minutes to as many as 20 minutes to complete, depending on the complexity of the test. So the easier the test is, the faster the candidates are going to get through it. You figure about a minute per question. However, if you ask some pretty tricky questions, you might be hovering around that 2 to 3 minute mark. So you want to keep the length of your test and test taking time into consideration. The other component you want to think about is when in the hiring process you're going to give this. If I'm going to use this test early in the hiring process, let's say after the person submits a resume, before they meet with the recruiter for their first time, I probably want to keep it in that sub 10-minute range, which means I'm probably going to be using a 5-question test in most cases. However, I'm hiring a blockchain developer in this case, so I might use this test as my initial screening that I just showed you, but I might need something more advanced because this is a complex subject. So I took this a step further. So I asked it a smarter question. What would you suggest? If you needed to hire a way to assess a blockchain developer, how would you go about making sure that this person was really skilled enough to do the job? And it laid it all out for me. So it gave me the whole blueprint for doing that. So one of the cool things that we're doing with Discovered is Discovered's gonna begin to do this for people. We're gonna have this whole test creation system set up right inside of Discovered, so I can be creating these tests, reviewing my questions, eliminating ones I don't like, or compiling them together. I'm gonna be able to do all that stuff right here inside of Discovered soon, and I'll be able to begin to distribute those tests. In the meantime, what we're doing is we're proving out this proof of concept here is our hiring coaches are doing this for people. We can get this test loaded into Discovered in an hour or less and begin distributing it to candidates almost immediately or running it by hiring managers. So our next step in this process is to have a senior blockchain developer review the test, take it, and tell us what they think. And as we've done this exercise with other folks, they're just blown away. It's basically spot on. The number of revisions are close to 0 in most cases. And then later in that hiring process, after the candidates engage, we're gonna have a much more in-depth assessment, be able to sit that person down for maybe more like a 30-minute assessment versus just that kind of 5 to 10 initial screening tests. And that's gonna help us really make sure that that person has the skill set that we're looking for. And so that's gonna be able to help us do a much better job at this technical interview. Again, somebody like me, if I'm hiring a blockchain developer and I don't have that much familiarity with it, it's gonna be very difficult for me to even though I may have interview questions and a scorecard, this is almost gonna be able to help us replace that technical interview in many cases. And then the last thing I always recommend is a half to a full day, what I call working interview. And that's where we get to do some of these things, coding challenges, code review, and project-based stuff. So I need a coding challenge for a blockchain developer, and I wanted a basic, intermediate, and advanced. So earlier in this process, I actually had it create one. And here's my examples. So now I can simply send this to the candidate, have them complete it, record their process using a tool like Loom or something like that, and then deliver the code, let's say in GitHub, for a senior developer to review. Or even better yet, we're gonna have ChatGPT review the code for us and give us an assessment of how well they did. These are just a number of things that we're gonna be able to do in creating custom skill-based assessments. Follow us along in the journey as we begin to implement AI into Discovered to make executing all of these things faster and easier for you, our clients. In the meantime, let our hiring coaches help you implement these. They're happy to do the work for you. Sit down with them and do a free consultation, and they'll begin getting a blockchain test, an accounting test, project management, construction, you name it. Pick your subject. We like hard hiring challenges. We're gonna implement that for you.